Listen again on Redshift. Brought to you by the Virgin Trains Training Academy.
Hi, good evening. Welcome to History Mystery here on Redshift Radio with Tim Prevett, here joined in the studio with my daughter Freya.
Hello.
And my son Taliesin.
Woohoo, good to be here.
Good to be here. Thank you for my guest tonight phoning in right on prompt, Geoff from Scotland, whom I'll introduce more in a few moments' time. Yeah, tonight we'll be talking about vampires again. We talked about vampires in Stoke-on-Trent a few weeks ago. In a couple of weeks' time, I hope to be introducing another guest from Stoke-on-Trent. So, coming up in this hour, we have 3 tracks chosen by my guest, and I need to talk to you about next week's show, because next Tuesday, is Redshift's first birthday exactly. I will be doing a 2-hour special. Without the mystery stuff, next week will be straightforward history, and I'm planning on having 12 phone-in guests from all over the country during the 2-hour special. I've already got several confirmed from Birmingham, Northampton, West Sussex, Northumberland, Middlewich. I'm hoping to get some from the Crewe area, and this is all to do with Heritage Open Days. Yes, over the period from 8th of September through to the 11th of September, there are over 4,300 heritage events happening over England. I myself are going to be organising tours in Crewe, some free tours. Maybe I'll get around to talking to them about them a little bit later on. But so next week will be a big special for Redshift and for History and Mystery with 12 phone-in guests from all over the country. Okay, let's start swinging it around to tonight's content after that slightly delayed start there. My biggest apologies. I knew there was something not quite right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Now, are you here with me, Geoff?
I am indeed. Good evening, Tim.
Good evening. My apologies for the technical error at the start of the show there. Great to have you here with us, Geoff. Okay, can you tell us who you are, what you do? I've been looking up on your website during the week, and I feel very excited to talk to you here tonight, and I think my guests and my listeners should be very excited to hear what you have to say and who you are too.
Okay, cheers. Well, firstly, good evening, Freya. Good evening, Taliesin.
Got the name right there, fantastic.
Good evening, Radio World. My name is Geoff Holder. I'm a full-time writer. I write books about the supernatural and the strange, the paranormal, the peculiar, the gothic, the grotesque, and sometimes they're just plain bonkers as well.
Okay.
And I have the best job in the world, because I get to write about things that I love. So I get to write about body snatching, and about stone circles, and about werewolves and ghosts, and, folklore, and all these sort of wonderful things, and also get to write about vampires as well.
Fantastic. That's the kind of life I'm trying to lead towards as well. I like doing tours and talking about weird and wonderful things. I love visiting ancient sites. I like cemeteries, the gothic. Yes, you sound like my kind of guy, Geoff. I'd have a long chat with you in a pub, I reckon.
Yes, I reckon so too. And if you're like me, you probably spend far too much time than is healthy hanging around graveyards.
Yes, indeed. My daughter's here with me. She's quite keen to promote herself as a goth sometimes, and has been accused of hanging around graveyards, which, given her father does, if it's not like a Victorian graveyard, it's like a Neolithic or Bronze Age barrow cemetery or barrow. So excellent stuff. Okay, for our listeners, and by courtesy, Geoff and I got in contact through a magazine called Northern Earth, which originally started out as a journal of things to do of exactly the kind of content Geoff and I just talked about, to do with Northern England, but over the years it has spread to have a much more national as well as international coverage on issues of folklore, archaeology, mysteries in the landscape, and so on. Both Geoff and I subscribe to Northern Earth. It's a fantastic publication. It's really very cheap subscription. It's only a few quid a year, £7-8 a year. Is that right, Geoff? If I remember correct.
I think it's £9 a year, something like that.
Is there something like that? And it's a quarterly produced. It's quality. The editor does a superb job of it, John Billingsley. And Geoff and I got in contact through the Northern Earth Readers List, which, if you subscribe to Northern Earth, then the editor in the editorial team can arrange for you to be put on a special internet emailing list to discuss all the kind of content that regularly comes up on History Mystery. Okay, Geoff, so can you tell us what your website is, any Twitter, Facebook contacts that people could be used to looking up on you in the meantime?
Yeah, sure. The primary way to sort of get to find out about what I do is to go to geoffholder.com.
Excellent.
And there's lots of things on there. There's videos, there's picture galleries, there's podcasts, there's lists of all the events that I do. I'd give a lot of talks around the country, so they're all listed there as well, and some book signings that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And bits and pieces. I've got a blog on there as well, and so those are the primary activities. And then I think Twitter, as I recall, is
at Geoff Holder 58.
That's it. That's you're in advance of me there. That's the very same.
Yeah.
It's all a bit black magic to me, that side of things. But yeah, Geoff Holder at 58. That's the one there.
Fantastic.
And so that's the sort of the primary way that you can find out what I'm up to, and I sort of update the website about 4 or 5 times a week, so it's always up to date.
That's fantastic, Geoff. It is a really good website as well, with Geoff Holder's website. I do recommend having a look. It's something that I can learn from myself about how to do a really good website about your personal interests that you're doing for your living. Okay, now I'm just looking down my list here. Okay, Geoff, you've chosen 3 pieces for us tonight, and I get the feeling that you've got overlapping taste in music with myself as well. You've got some fantastic krautrock lined up for us, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm a big fan of the 70s movement called krautrock. Now, I know some people find that term quite offensive, and they tend to use kosmische music instead. But it's basically what happened in Germany in the 1970s. You had this combination of psychedelia and electronic music, and it produced some of the most wonderful music of the time. And first up, we've got a group called Neu, who were big on some melodic repetition and an acknowledged influence on both Hawkwind and The Fall, interestingly enough. And tonight we've got a beautiful melodic piece called Easy.
Easy. Okay, we'll just start that in just a moment. Before I press the go button, we'll be talking about the vampire with iron teeth. Some interesting happenings in the Glaswegian cemetery in the 1950s. But for now, here's some music from Germany in the 1970s, and we could talk about a lot about that, but it'd be going off our topic for tonight. Here's Neu with Easy. Thank you, Geoff. I'll catch you in a moment.
Okay.
Hi, you're back again with Tim Prevett and History and Mystery with my guest phoning in from Perthshire in Scotland, Geoff Holder. You're still here with us, Geoff?
I am indeed, Tim.
Fantastic. So, in our emailings over the past week, we decided that you would like to talk about the vampire with the iron teeth. It sounds a rather fantastical title. Tell us more about that. What was the build up to it? What was going on back in 1954?
Okay, well, it's a specific time, specific place. There's a Wednesday in September 1954 in the southern necropolis, which sounds a very grand thing, but is actually a large but very open and rather undistinguished cemetery in the Gorbals, which is a very poor area of Glasgow. And hundreds of school children invade this cemetery. And the parents and the other adults around, they're unable to control them, so they call the police. And the police have difficulty marshalling the kids as well. And when I ask them what's going on, they're saying they're hunting the vampire with iron teeth. And that this creature has, according to the rumor, already killed and eaten 2 little boys.
Right.
Once the kids have been shepherded out of the cemetery, that night many of them are so frightened or so excited that they can't sleep. And so, parents are up all night, or they're trying to get them all sorts of things to get them to go to sleep. The following day, the Thursday, a local reporter doing, this crime beat phones up the police station in the Gorbals, and he accidentally finds out about the vampire story. On Friday morning, the story is printed in a local Glasgow paper. On Friday evening, it's in all the Glasgow papers in the west of Scotland. By Saturday morning, it's across the whole of the UK in all the tabloids. And by Sunday, the papers are printing that the kids are saying the vampire with iron teeth is dead.
Right.
And that was even a headline in one of the papers. The vampire with iron teeth is dead, and not even tabloid writers get to have a headline like that very often.
Yes, it's like
it was like a 3-day wonder.
It's like a sort of proto-Sunday Sport headline, isn't it, almost?
Yeah.
That's gone now, that paper anyway. Okay, so do we have an idea how these rumours actually started?
Well, the answer to that is yes, no, and maybe. That is to say, many adults thought they knew what was going on.
Okay.
but none of them actually asked the kids how this had started. And in my opinion, it was just another sort of ephemeral playground story that got a bit out of hand.
Okay, yeah.
You know, it's the kind of thing that kids get obsessed about for a few hours, maybe a couple of days, and then it goes away. This one was different to all of those kind of evanescent sort of fads in that it made it to the papers.
Yeah, yeah.
There was a whole sort of a kind of culture of these kind of stories circulating in the Glasgow area for many decades. In the 1950s, people had already been hunting for a maniac or whatever that maniac was. In the 30s, they were hunting for a disembodied hand, another ghost. There were even kids hunting for Spring-Heeled Jack, who was first seen in London in the 1830s.
Yeah.
And I traced these kind of children's hunts back to the 1890s, when hundreds of children were out late at night hunting hobgoblins in a supposedly haunted house.
Yeah.
And in each case, what you have is something that erupts and just lasts for a few hours, maybe a few days, and then it dies down again.
Excellent. Yeah.
And so I think that was what was happening here. But as I said, the difference was that it made it to the press and it became like this big story, and it therefore then became a big sort of political story as well.
Okay. Yes, there's also we have a bit of an in-joke with my children about leprechauns, and we were there's hunts for leprechauns as well. Was that right? In different times?
Yeah. In 1964, hundreds of children hunted leprechauns in Liverpool.
Right.
And it was like a mini riot. And when they were collared by the cops or any adults, and I said, "What are you doing?" They said, "We're hunting for leprechauns."
Right.
And they really believed they were hunting for leprechauns. But a day later, they thought it was ludicrous.
Right.
It's that kind of sort of children's culture. I think that was what was going on.
I guess very literally the magic of the moment. So.
Yes, correct. Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that it's something that goes like this. For those of us who are now adults, we can remember what it was like to be a child in an emotional sense.
Yeah.
I can remember being sad or hurt or happy. But I can't really recall or reconstruct what it was like to be a child in intellectual sense.
Mm-hmm.
The cognitive world of my childhood is partly closed to me. I think that those kids in 1954, for maybe two days, truly believed that there was a vampire with iron teeth haunting the cemetery and that they were going to go and get him. Yeah. And then a day later they thought the whole thing was nonsense.
No, it's just kind of wonderful to look back and think those things. I grew up in rural Dorset near a town called Wareham, and we had a 40 square mile forest a few hundred yards up the road from us, and me and my friends would sometimes disappear for a whole day during some holidays up there, and we would get ourselves believing that there were bears up there, and we would really frighten ourselves. I've just seen a bear down there where we'd made dens down in the trees. So yeah, I could identify with that. I think I quite like that. I wonder if my children, have you ever done anything like that? What there's anything magical, weird or wonderful lurking for you? No? I'm getting one nod and one shy look. Okay, we'll leave it there. Okay, now the story takes a very dramatic and comes to the attention of Parliament. We'll lead on to that after the next track. And the next track, I'll let you introduce Geoff. It's the Simonetti Project.
Oh, yes. This is the Simonetti Project, are an offshoot of the Italian progressive rock group Goblin,
right.
Very well known for their soundtrack music. And this is the theme from the classic Italian horror film Suspiria. And if you haven't seen this film, go out and see it now, because it will rock your socks. It's amazing.
Okay, that's a new one for me, so I'm just making a note of that as a film, and I will look that up because I do like a good horror film. Okay, we'll play Geoff's second choice, Suspiria, by the Simonetti Project.
Redshift Radio, bringing communities together. With Tim Prevett.
That Suspiria was fantastic. I love that, Geoff. Thank you very much for introducing me to that.
Yeah, it's great. It's got that sort of element of Tubular Bells, a bit of John Carpenter in it as well.
Yeah.
And it really sets the scene for the weird creepiness of the film.
Fantastic. No, I've got to look that one up. Yeah, we do feature film soundtracks fairly often on this show, and it's possible there might be some changes to my show in the months ahead. I have to wait and see what the station organisers and founders and runners say, but Gavin Liz, but I might be interested in trying to do a film on film soundtracks, because it's a wonderful world that doesn't get played enough on radio.
I quite agree, yeah.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, so returning to the Vampire with Iron Teeth, besides the tabloid attention and hundreds of kids going hunting for a vampire in a Glaswegian cemetery, it got the attention of Parliament and forged some very unlikely political alliances. Can you tell us a little bit more what happens with this, please?
Yep. Once the hunt for the vampire with iron teeth sort of went national, people started to look for something to blame. Something had gone wrong. What was to blame? And after coming up with a few false leads, they settled on the idea of American horror comics.
Right.
Things like I've forgotten, Tales from the Crypt.
That's right, yeah.
And The Vault of Horror. These were being imported from America. And the idea being that these sort of sensationalist, garish, gothic, and quite violent comics were somehow corrupting our kids. And the finger was pointed at these comics. And in Glasgow in particular, a powerful body of adults came together to try and ban the comics. And now, at the one hand, you'd have the people that you'd expect, parents, teachers, Christian groups. But on the other hand, you had a really unusual alliance partner, which was the Communist Party of Great Britain. Now, the Communist Party of Great Britain had a remit to limit the power and the influence of American culture in Britain. Mm-hmm. So they joined on the bandwagon as well and said, these American comics are obviously filth and trash, we have to stop them. And eventually, this sort of movement got to Parliament. And the Parliament introduced an act to sort of restrict and censor these comics so that they couldn't be imported, and they also limit what could be printed in Britain. And during that debate, the honourable member for Tradeston, which was the area in which the Goebbels was included, mm-hmm. stood up and had the only time that the Houses of Parliament have debated the actions of a vampire.
That's fantastic.
In 1955, he stood up and he talked about the vampire with iron teeth in Parliament. Absolutely brilliant. I've read the Hansard report. It's just terrific. He digresses into Loch Ness Monster for a little bit, then he gets back onto the vampire with iron teeth. And as a result of those kind of debates, the act was passed, and for well over a decade, comics in Britain were deeply restricted. Now, the irony of this is that, as I said, no one actually asked the kids what they'd been reading. And last year there was a little documentary on them on the event, and they went back and they asked some of the guys who were now quite old, and some of them said they never seen an American comic. Some of them didn't even know what a vampire was. Yes, they weren't influenced by what the adults thought they were being influenced by. But as a result of this, we ended up with some of the most severe restriction on comics in the world.
Mm-hmm. It's a kind of inverted McCarthyism, and instead of like American culture fearing there is rats under the bed and the communists looking under every corner, it's communists being paranoid about American culture coming into Britain.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, who could wish for the strangest combination of Christians and crypto communists? Just brilliant.
Okay, so we were watching an episode of Ghost Hunters, like the Atlantic Paranormal Society, last night with my children, and I've got one child listening back home with my partner. Hello there, Pauline and Ollie and Felicity, if you're still up, last night. And they were doing some ghost hunting, as it were, in Salem, and which takes us on to like the witch trials thing. You've written about witch trials in your area as well, in Scotland?
Yes, that's right.
And sort of the paranoia and hysteria.
The history of witchcraft persecution in Scotland was quite different to in England,
mm-hmm.
And it was much more intense.
Yeah.
So, for example, torture was legal in Scotland for witch trials, and whereas although it did happen in England, it wasn't strictly legal, and more witches per head of population were prosecuted and executed in Scotland than they were in England. And this is partly due to the enthusiasm, if you like, of King James the Sixth, who later became James the First of England in 1603. He genuinely thought that his life had been put under threat by the actions of several witches. And he participated in their trial. He asked them questions. He wrote a book on persecuting witchcraft called On Demonology. He sanctioned the use of extreme measures. And so the rest of the country said, well, is it good enough for the king? Is it good enough for us? And they sort of embarked on rather unpleasant and gory sort of persecution of people who were accused of various forms of witchcraft.
Yes, I remember doing a Witchery and Cadies tour in Edinburgh, which starts up near the castle, and they start that with the point of, I remember correctly, there's actually a plaque there where witches were burnt and executed on that very spot.
That's correct. That's just outside Edinburgh Castle.
Yeah, I remember it. Absolutely horrific tales. And, well, not just tales, absolutely true. Okay, right, I'm just checking my running order again for this evening. Okay, so the legislation was passed. These comics were restricted for about a decade, as we've said. Okay, so would you like to introduce then your third choice of music?
Earlier I was mentioning how in the 1890s hundreds of kids in Glasgow had been hunting hobgoblins.
Yeah.
So this is the Fall. I should point out, when John Peel introduced the Fall, he never said this is the Fall, he said this is the Mighty Fall.
Right.
So this is the Mighty Fall and their classic track, City Hobgoblins.
Okay, which will be followed by a short Tangerine Dream track called The Tangs from, called The Journey, which is from the Sorcerer original soundtrack. Okay, thank you. Hi, you're back in the studio with Tim Prevett, my two children, Freya and Taliesin, and my guest, Geoff. Hi, Geoff, you still with us up in Perthshire?
Hello.
Fantastic. Okay, so we've talked about the Vampire of Iron Teeth. Are there any other particular things you would like to talk to us about? Any talks, books, things coming up that would be good for you to talk about to a wider audience?
Yeah, well, the full study of the Vampire with Iron Teeth, which, goes into extraordinary detail, is in the book that I wrote called Paranormal Glasgow, which came out earlier this year. And it's part of a series that I've been doing. I've done Paranormal Dundee and Paranormal Perthshire. They're both out, and I've just finished writing Paranormal Cumbria, and that'll be out early in the new year. And I've also done a whole series with Haunted in the title. So I've done things like Haunted Aberdeen and Haunted Dundee, and I'm just about to write Haunted St Andrews. Now, this may not mean much to people within the sort of the Cheshire area, but if there are anyone who happens to have any stories about, say, St Andrews or any of those other areas, please get in touch with me at geoffholder.com. I've got a form there that people can fill in. I'm making an appeal for their personal experiences or their sort of family traditions of encounters with ghosts and other sort of non-human sort of entities as well. And I'm sort of always interested in those kind of things. I do about something like 20 or 30 talks a year. I haven't got anything in England in the near future, although I'm doing London. I'm doing the Ghost Club at London in 2012. Yeah. But I've got a number of other talks in various Scottish locations coming up in the next few months. Once again, there's lots of details of those on the website. I sort of keep up at Twitter. That's Geoff Holder 58 is the hashtag there. I'm also on Facebook as well. I've just finished my 24th book, and I've got a few more sort of commissioned on sort of similar lines.
Fantastic.
And that's basically how I spend my time. I spend my days, writing and researching, witchcraft and demonology and ghosts and werewolves and
Yeah.
urban legends as well. Those are the kind of things that I get to do. It's great.
It is. I'm sort of finding myself quite inspired talking to you because you're in a dynamic which I'm very much aspiring to try to live in myself. I've authored one book, I've got another one that I need to be getting on with, and it's good to be talking to somebody who's doing what I'm aspiring to do. So that's excellent, Geoff.
I'll tell you a wee story. 3.5 years ago, I had a proper job. I wasn't an author. I had a proper job.
Yeah.
With paycheck and all that kind of thing. And I published 2 or 3 books, and I had an opportunity to publish a lot more because the publisher said yes to 6 of my pitches, and I gave up the job. And I've been writing full time ever since, and it's been a completely positive change in my life and lifestyle in all aspects apart from one area, and that's finance.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's just fantastic. It's completely revolutionised my life. That I get to do what I love all the time. Wonderful.
Yes, that sounds a similar emotional journey to myself about 6 or 7 years ago. Just doing a job for paying the bills and not doing a job because it's something you love. And
yes, exactly.
We could digress at length there. I'll have to make a trip up to Perthshire and have a pint with you in a pub somewhere.
Yeah, that's right.
And get out some of those.
Please do. It would be a pleasure to see you.
Yes. We must fit into a similar demographic with similar tastes in music and interests.
That's right.
Yeah. It's quite intriguing. Now, one thing I'd like to ask you is: have you ever had any paranormal or strange experiences yourself that you'd be happy to talk about on air?
Well, Tim, given the fact that I spend a good part of my professional life hanging around graveyards, wandering through subterranean passages and caves and that sort of thing, visiting allegedly haunted locations such as castles and theatres and places like that, and when I'm not doing that, go into sort of stone circles and other ancient sites, I've not had a single paranormal experience ever.
Mm-hmm. Not even
a bit disappointing, really.
Not even a fuzzy sensation like, oh, there's something here.
No. I am astonishingly boring when it comes to picking up sensations and atmospheres. Other people feel that I'm going, what's going on? I can't have anything. I've been with people who have had unusual experiences in specific locations, but I've not shared those experiences, and I've said nothing unusual has ever happened to me.
Oh, never mind. Okay.
No, it's actually, I think it's great. I think what happens is that when I turn up, whatever is in the area doesn't want to come out and play for some reason.
Yeah, it's, yes. I have had a few paranormal experiences myself. I won't go into them now, but on occasion, I felt that something's holding back, and it's just going to say, "Oh, like, easy. I'm not bothered. I'm just not going to do anything tonight." So, that's what else I was going to ask you. That's right. I've posted your profile picture so people know who you're talking, whom I'm talking with on the History Mystery Facebook group. You're holding a skull. Is that skull got a particular story to it?
Well, I spend a lot of time doing the research process that I like to call wandering around and bumping into things.
Yep.
Which is when I'm doing a book, like, for instance, I write books with titles like, The Guide to Mysterious Aberdeenshire, or The Guide to the Mysterious Lake District, or The Guide to the Mysterious Loch Ness.
Yep.
And when I do that, I just visit everything within a given area, whether it's graveyards or ancient monuments, or places where something allegedly paranormal has taken place, or sort of sites associated with UFOs or cryptozoology, big cats, lake monsters, all that kind of thing. And whilst I'm doing that, I just like to pick up skulls.
Right.
Animal skulls, I should point out, not human skulls.
Body snatching.
Yes. Although my wife did actually find part of a skull on a beach in Orkney, and we had to take it to the police, and an archaeologist declared that it was about 1,000 years old, and so no police action was required. But I just like to pick up skulls. So my house is filled with books, it's filled with CDs, it's filled with plastic dinosaurs and other monsters, and it's filled with animal skulls.
My God.
because you need something to furnish your house with, don't you? So I just use animal skulls, and that one it just happens to be one of the sheep skulls that I happen to own.
That's quite marvellous. I found a fantastic skull. My partner and I, we were up in Northumberland looking at some cup and ring marks on a rock panel, and we found a fantastic skull, and with good curled horns like the one you're holding in that picture. And I've thought many times since, I wish I'd brought it back with me, because all the soft squidgy stuff had gone from inside it, which is one of the things I don't like, is thinking, I might see its brains.
No, I'm not going to touch anything that's still got organic remains in it.
Yeah, and this was clean, and I was thinking, rats. Okay, right, what we are going to be doing next. Okay, so you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, your website's geoffholder.com.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's Geoff with a Geoff, if you're wanting to look. I do recommend going and have a look. And again, to plug Northern Earth magazine, which was our point of contact for this, look on Google and look up Northern Earth, and you can subscribe. It's up well under a tenner for 4 copies of a quality folklore, archaeology, mystery mag. It's well worth it. Okay.
Yeah, one of my favourite reads.
It's fantastic. So, anything else you'd like to say on air, Geoff, before I go into the next song?
No, well, just to say that if anyone wants to get in touch or does have a personal experience that they want to share and they think it might be interesting for one of my future books,
cool.
They can go to the website, geoffholder.com, and there's a form that they can fill in there, and they can also sort of email me directly through the website as well. So I get wonderful emails all the time from people with unusual requests and experiences. So I'm happy to hear from anyone who wants to forward anything to me.
Excellent. I will mention some of your requests on Twitter and my Facebook tomorrow. And so I've got about an hour's drive back up to Manchester after doing this show, so won't go online then. But if it hopefully might pull in somebody, I don't know. But you don't know if you don't ask. So
exactly. I'm always amazed about who's reading or who's listening.
Yeah,
and what they've experienced. It's part of the pleasure, part of the wonder of researching these kind of areas, is that you never know what's going to turn up the following day.
Absolutely, I find it magical. I love it. And just as an aside question, do you do holy wells and ancient trees?
Say again.
Do you do holy wells and ancient trees?
I've had a long-standing interest in holy wells, partly because I like things that you can touch and see.
Yeah.
When it comes to the paranormal, most things are so ephemeral that you can't touch and see them, and you have to take it someone's word that something happened. With holy wells, you can go there, and they also provide a window into a previous world of a combination of religious and magical belief and practices. And I've written a lot about holy wells, particularly in Scotland and also in Cumbria. And some of them were extraordinary events. We haven't got the time to go into holy wells now.
I guess we'll have to have you back on the show a couple more times and talk about these things.
I can wibble on for holy wells for hours.
Yeah, and ancient trees, ancient yews.
Yeah, I love ancient. There's nothing better than when you're wandering through a woodland and finding some sort of an oak or birch that's they've got this massive girth. Sometimes the branches are propped up by supports or posts. And many trees have got wonderful folklore and legends associated with them as well.
They have indeed.
And of course, you get that whole thing about, particularly with I think it's beech, where you get that sort of simulacra, where they sort of turn into tortured faces that you can see in the trunks and the branches, and that sort of links in the whole thing about the ideas of the green man, and it just goes on forever. Ancient trees, another favourite.
Absolutely, yeah. I really feel that we can talk a lot more about our interests and talk about some of your books and your talks, and I guess my talks as well, because I do similar kinds of things at times.
Absolutely, yes. I mean, as I said, I could waffle on these subjects forever, but holy wells, let's make it a date.
Absolutely. I'll be in touch by email, Geoff. I'm going to have to wish you a good night now, because I've got a few more things I need to pack in before the show ends. So thank you for joining us, Geoff.
Thank you very much for having me on, and cheerio, Freya, cheerio, Taliesin.
Cheerio.
They said cheerio.
Cheers.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you, Geoff. You're welcome to hang up now, and I will get on with the rest of the show.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Good night.
Good night.
Right, you're still back here in the studio with Tim, Freya and Taliesin, and we have talked an awful lot. My children might be disappointed now because I'm going to probably have to remove the tracks that they've asked me to play for them, and I'll have to play them for you another time. Indeed, yes. Well, it is a history mystery show. Okay, right. So, just going to bring you a couple jingles, and then I'll be right back to you to talk about next week's show again.
Redshift Radio, online community radio for Cheshire and beyond.
Hi, you're back in the studio with Tim, Freya and Taliesin. I've just had to remove their tracks that they wanted. I will play them for them another time, I promise you. Don't miss next week's. Again, I've got 12 guests phoning in from all over the country. I'll be tweeting and Facebooking about it in the week to come. I will leave you with a rare KLF track from America. It's called America No More.
Listen again on Redshift, brought to you by the Virgin Trains Training Academy.